Andariki namaskaram, ellarkum vanakkam. Very good afternoon to all of you. Welcome, sir. And before I introduce our panelists today and take you to the flow of the event, I'd like to say a few words about my association with EQUIPPP. I had met Mr. Lakshmi Narayana quite a few years ago when he spoke about social value investing and what EQUIPPP is all about. Frankly, I was a bit skeptical. I was also curious to learn how this would actually pan out. And interestingly, a couple of years after that event, the interview, the interaction that we had, we met again during the release of the book, Social Value Investing, just a few years ago. And by then, he mentioned that the social stock exchange is now developing as a full-fledged framework in India, and it's really heartening to see how great minds can think alike in various places and commonly converge into a great idea, which is what we are going to talk about today. This knowledge session is definitely going to enlighten all of us here, and we have eminent experts who are exploring this and exploring the potential of this kind of a concept in a country like India, because I was told that the social stock exchange has actually not succeeded in almost 18 countries, but surprisingly there is tremendous potential in a country like India, where charity, where philanthropy, where the act of giving is very innate to our land and our culture. So I'm privileged to be part of this session here, and with no further delay, let me first introduce who our speakers are today, and then we'll start with the lighting of the lamp and then have the knowledge session commence. So our keynote speaker, Shri Jeevan Sonparote Garu, is the Chief General Manager of SEBI. He is a convener and a member of SEBI's technical group on social stock exchange and has been instrumental in its development. Jeevan has been very active in bringing visibility to the social stock exchange and has conducted multiple knowledge sessions throughout the country. And my associates also tell me that he's an excellent speaker, obviously, which we are going to actually witness, and he delivers his ideas with a crystal clear mind. So we look forward to his address today in this session. Our next keynote speaker, Shri Hemant Gupta, is the Managing Director of BRTSIF, which is the foundation set up to promote startups and support the Government of India's vision for entrepreneurship development and innovation culture. He is leading the Social Stock Exchange initiative at the BSE and was a member at SEBI's technical group on social stock exchange. Hemant Gupta ji is also the MD and CEO of BSE Sammaan, a web portal launched to bridge the gap between corporate firms and NGOs to facilitate corporate social responsibility transactions. We are really glad to have you here, sir, today as part of this. This is actually a close match, in fact, to what EQUIPPP is also striving to achieve. We have also with us today Shri Konda Vishweshwar Reddy Garu, very well known, a man of many talents, and he's well known as an engineer, an innovator, an entrepreneur, and a politician. He holds the rare distinction of receiving a USA patent while sitting in the office of the Member of Parliament. And Vishweshwar Reddy Garu is not just known for his social work, but also for the innovation and use of technology for social impact. And hence, he makes his views very relevant to today's discussions. Welcome, sir. Our next speaker is Professor K. Nageshwarji, who is also extremely well known, and he's a man of many words, and he's a knowledge bank, and he's a former politician, a political analyst, and we've heard him many times on different occasions. He has made a multifaceted contribution to the society, spreading across fields of life, including education, media, public policy, social mobilization, besides also legislation making. And he uses the YouTube as a medium right now to voice out his ideas, which are crystal clear and makes everyone understand. So we look forward to listen to Professor K. Nageshwar today. Our next speaker, and very important to today's session, is Shri Ramesh Kazagaru. He's the Senior MD and CIO of State Street India, which is one of the largest financial services and bank holding companies in the world. And his ability to manage very large teams and multi-million-dollar portfolio makes him one of the finest industry leaders. And apart from excellence on the professional front, he is known for his work in the social impact space, and he has lent his services in pro bono mode to various causes. And his pivotal role in setting up a COVID care center in Hyderabad throughout cross-sector collaboration is very inspiring. And also, not at all surprisingly, he is a board member of United Way India, and we look forward to his interaction today with our speakers. Thank you, sir. Welcome. And now, for an auspicious beginning, which we've already actually made, I request all our esteemed guests to come forward to light the lamp. Jyoti Prakashana, as we call it, is innate to our culture. I request Shri Jeevan ji, Shri Hemant ji, Shri Vishweshwar Reddy ji, Professor Nageshwar, and Shri Ramesh ji to please come forward and light the lamp. And as they come on to the dais, I request Srimati Vindhya Dronam Raju Garu to please come and welcome them with a small token on behalf of EQUIPPP. Shri Pitani Sachinarayan Garu, former minister, well known to all of us, to please come forward to light the lamp.
Year 2021, when the entire country was reeling under the Delta variant of the COVID, many of us had no clue how to even manage that situation. We had a fair idea of COVID because 2020 was okay for India, but come 2021, February, March time frame, by the time we started to realize what was going on, we had very little time to react. Sometimes it could be our own loved ones, or it could be the friends that we are connected with. We just saw them losing the life right in front of our eyes. It was very painful. The commissioner then for the Cyberabad, Shri Sajjanar, came and suggested we should run a temporary hospital where he could supply the remdesivir and the oxygen, which was not so easily available in the market. Fortunately, I've been associated to the social work for close to 20 years by then through the platform called United Way, which is technically the world's largest non-profit organization. Along with me and many other industry leaders, we could quickly come together and look at it as an opportunity to set up something that could help the public despite their financial status. Because at that point of time, the focus was not on financial status, the focus was to save the lives. Sometimes our own near and dear, sometimes the people that we don't even know we need to support. Fast forward, That particular makeshift hospital ran in an apartment for close to 3.5 to 4 months. And it was well supported, of course, by Dr. Chinnababu. I see him in the audience here, where he came forward to support with his doctor group, nurses, and the entire operations ran with great support from volunteers. And we could cover roughly about 210 people lives. And thank God there were zero mortality from the service we did. It is something that I, as an individual, remember primarily for the rest of my life, because we do take time to donate sometimes the money, sometimes we give our knowledge, or sometimes we give our time to a social cause. But witnessing the patients walking into this makeshift hospital, supporting them live, sitting with them, made me to realize that the joy of giving surpasses everything else that you actually experience in your life. The trust factor is what I wanted to start with when we do anything connecting to social impact. Unless the individual or the company believes that their donation is going for a right cause, they won't come forward to donate that money. Everything is based upon trust when it comes to giving. Giving your time, giving your money, or giving your knowledge. So fast forward, just about 25 days back, when I happened to meet Mr. Lakshmi Narayana, the person behind EQUIPPP, I was so excited to hear the word social stock exchange. And trust me, I'm certainly not the eligible person to talk about it. I've learned this just in the last 3 weeks of the government making social stock exchange a reality, and the opportunity for the non-profits and the corporates to come together and utilize this as a platform. And I firmly believed, just hearing from Mr. Lakshmi Narayana, that this is probably a catalyst of change that can bring into social impact. If you are here in this audience, you are here for a reason. You could be a corporate leader, you could be a non-profit, or you could be a person who is looking forward to how to serve the community through some platform, and I could see this as an opportunity here for sure. I have a day job, but I firmly believe that I have a responsibility of making an impact in the community every day. So I'm looking forward to an opportunity to have a more candid dialogue with eminent speakers we have today. Of course, while we hear from Shri Jeevan and also from Shri Hemant in a short while, I'm looking forward to Shri Konda Vishweshwar Reddy Garu and Professor Nageshwar Garu about their understanding of how the social stock exchange is going to take shape. And then once we complete the discussion, we'll call our guests who have come all the way from Mumbai to spend time with us. And we will see how the city of Hyderabad can make the best use of this new opportunity that has now been initiated by the government. Having said that, sir, I would like to turn the speaker, the microphone to you. You've been in this industry wearing various hats, and congratulations on getting a patent, especially something that we don't hear from the so-called politician at the time, but of course, for the fact that you are a technocrat, you work for various multinational organizations, we are quite keen to hear from you about what you felt when you heard about the social stock exchange, and how do you think the non-profits as well as the corporates can make the best use of this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. I thank EQUIPPP Social Impact Technologies to giving me particularly the opportunity to understand the social stock exchange. Definitely, clearly I'm not an expert, the experts are there. But knowing that I'm going to be invited, knowing that what the occasion is, I did read up. I also, being a politician, I was there when Nirmala Sitharaman ji, 3 years back, announced we should and we will have a social stock exchange in India, and I can see that is happening today. Various governments, oh, before that, one small disclaimer, I'm in the business of innovation, but believe me, there's nothing except God, nobody truly innovates something. They copy one idea and another idea, and in between create another idea, and then they patent it. Now, so also what I'm going to talk about, social stock exchange, it's not truly what my original speech. I'm going to copy bits and pieces of what I heard and then put it together. The first thing I like to present to you is the very concept of responsibility. And once again, it's not my original concept. I heard it from a great man, so I'm just repeating. Imagine I had a glass of milk here, and accidentally I spilt it. Now, who is responsible for that? I accidentally, while speaking, I spilled this glass of milk. Who is responsible for it? I'm pretty sure everyone agrees I am responsible for that. But that's when I heard this great man and learned it's not just me responsible, all of you are responsible for this. It is all of your responsibility as well, because the very word responsibility, we have understood wrong, we were taught wrong, that English word responsibility. Because responsibility means the ability to respond. Now, I'm the cause of this. I'm not responsible for it, I'm the cause of this. But you can be responsible, anyone can be responsible, and everyone has to be responsible. If the glass of milk spilled there, it's going to spoil this carpet. Maybe one friend will come jumping in to clear. Another one with a cell phone will call the housekeeping to clean it. The third one doesn't want, people to step over pieces of glass. They will stop and people from walking over the glass. So this act, this is the cause, but everyone in the audience, everyone in the world is responsible for every act that happens. If there's a car accident, who is responsible? The person who caused the accident is the driver, but all of us are responsible. Yes, you can call the police, you can call the ambulance. These are the responses. And the society is built on this. And various governments, and all of us understood this, and various governments have gone ahead and did facilitate such responses. If there's poverty, if there's hunger, if there's lack of sanitation, lack of education, people would like to respond to it and donate. And various governments, since I think last 40 years, starting with income tax exemption to donations, then subsequently 100% exemption, or later if it was misused, then they made it 50%, ATG, all these kinds, and then much later the corporate social responsibility. While I'm a beneficiary and a recipient of corporate social responsibility, I was also one of the greatest critique of corporate social responsibility. So of course, companies making profit, this responsibility cannot be forced on somebody. So corporate social responsibility, number one, forces you to respond. And whenever something is done by force and not with heart or empathy or sympathy, then it doesn't work out. So that is starting with the first very concept of social responsibility gets defeated. It should come from within, not from outside law and legislation. But yes, the second point is, in my opinion, once again, this is my opinion again, it is the greatest social work any person or any entity or organization can do is to provide or create a good product or a good service which the society needs and produce and deliver it. And then, in the process, you give employment to hundreds of people. And in the process, if the product is good quality and efficient, cost effective, many people will buy that product or service and you make profit. And from that profit, you pay taxes. And those taxes will go to build hospitals and roads and infrastructure. That is the greatest socially responsible act, and that is what all successful business do. Running a good corporate itself is a socially beneficial activity. So now you don't have to force them to do. If you pay your taxes, if you employ well, you create a good product, you follow all of the rules and regulation, that itself is one of the greatest socially responsible act, and you don't have to enforce. And to give 2% of your profit, if that's a great socially responsible act, I want to take that 2% and make that business grow to create more employment and more. So the very fundamental nature of corporate social responsibility being enforced. Now, I was a recipient, I cleaned bathrooms, so even exactly yesterday, Punjab National Bank gave me 2 trucks to go and clean bathrooms. So I'm a beneficiary of corporate social responsibility. Don't do that. But once it is forced, number one, it won't be very efficient how the money is going to be utilized. And secondly, there's internal administrative processes. You have to have employees who govern the corporate social responsibility. And then when you finally donate it to a company, how do you ensure that's happening? How do you ensure that it is being used in a right way? So these are various flaws in the various schemes the government put forward. So I am hoping, and I'm sure when Nirmala Sitharaman ji proposed this the social stock exchange, it is going to find solutions around these lacunas, or whether these loopholes in the existing schemes that the previous governments have proposed, which is income tax exemption, ATG, or CSR. So I'm here to ask questions and learn rather than giving a lecture. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, by the way, taught me about the meaning of responsibility is Jaggi Vasudev. Sadhguru Jaggi Vasudev. Right.
Thank you, sir. The connect between, quite keen to hear from you about your understanding of this new initiative the government has taken, and anything that you can share with a larger group today.
Well, I have also come here to listen. The only sin I have committed for Lakshminarayana to invite me was, I was perhaps the first among the earliest to speak in Telugu on social stock exchange in the Telugu media. When it was first announced in the Union Budget 1920, I posted a video on my YouTube channel. That brought me here. Other than that, I really don't know much about it.
I saw your video.
Thank you. Thank you. So, well, it's a wonderful initiative. It really works. Wonderful initiative because there is a great need to do in the world, in the social sector. If it works, because there are many challenges. What are the challenges? Well, the session began with stating that we have a culture of giving, sharing. Well, if I don't tell this, I will be called as anti-national. So perhaps to be more patriotic, I will also say, India is the land of Dharma. It's a great land of saints. Agastya lived here. So we are also living here. Fine, I have no objection to this. But is this really true? The famous Telugu poet Joshua said, దేవుళ్ళ పెళ్ళిళ్ళు చేయటానికి వేలకు వేలు ఇస్తారు కానీ పక్కవాడు ఆకలి తీర్చడానికి 10 పైసలు ఇయ్యారని. If we really had a divine stock exchange, if you invest in this divine stock exchange, you will get tons of punyam. I'm sure the investment would have poured like anything. So it is extremely difficult in India to convince those who have money to really share. There are individuals, there are corporate entities, but which are essentially islands in this whole world. So the first challenge is, how do you create a culture of investing in something where you do not have a direct financial return. Maybe in the for-profit enterprises, well, SEBI has realized this problem, and that's the reason it wanted both for-profit and non-profit to be there on the social stock exchange. SEBI is aware of the fact, but extremely difficult to get people to invest in non-profit, that too in a social stock exchange, unless normally the people who share will share only when they have a direct knowledge of the work that is being done. So if they really know what is being done with the money which they are giving, because it is their money, it is hard-earned money, nobody would like to lose that money. So that is the biggest challenge, how to promote a culture of investing in something where there is no lucrative financial returns. That's the first challenge. Second challenge, in our country, we believe that the social work has to be done by the government, not by us. If anything happens, if there is some kachra on the road, we will only call municipal office, but we won't do on our own. So we believe, when I was first elected as MLC, somebody in my colony called and said there are stray dogs before his house. So he wants me as an MLC to represent that problem. I said, dogs are not graduates, they have not voted for me, I said. So the reason I'm telling is we depend on government. I tell my own experience. I have lakhs of followers on my YouTube channel. There are around 7,60,000 subscribers and I have 1 crore views a month. I one day got an idea. Why can't I leverage this for some more socially useful thing? So I wanted to start a digital platform which links those who have something to offer, called like a human library, and the millions of helpless, underprivileged children, youth, who want to receive these wisdom. So I wanted, and I have contacted one of the leaders of the leading IT company to help me out, go about on this activity. The first message I got is, he directed me to T-Hub. So I understood that people are not ready to support. But I thank Lakshminarayan-ji. When I told this idea, he came forward, readily came forward to support me. So that's the biggest problem. How do you chase, how do you pierce through this culture which doesn't really allow such an easy sharing of what they have? So this is the first. Second is, how do you really, if you want to invest, an investor would like to see the balance sheet, whether it is a financial return, whether it is a social return. It is easy to quantify a financial return. You can quantify in terms of time and in terms of measure. You can quantify into terms of quarterly data. You can term in terms of turnover, profit, profit before tax, after tax, etc., etc. But how do you quantify social return? That's the second most important challenge. So unless somebody knows that my investment is creating a reasonable social return, so how do you create a robust balance sheet of social returns? You can create a robust balance sheet of commercial returns, but how do you create social return? That's the second thing. Third thing is, commercial balance sheets are being manipulated. So how do you try to create a foolproof social return balance sheet which cannot be manipulated? I have worked with some NGOs, so even the genuine NGOs try to do a lot of plastic surgery to sound very good to their donors. Because the problem is, you are given funding not by the work you do, by the kind of presentation you make. So they spend a lot of money in doing good presentation rather than good work. So this is another important challenge. How do you create a robust balance sheet of social return? Then the third thing is, what is social? Something social for you may not be social for me. The very debate on freebies is an indication. When midday meal scheme was launched, people thought that is a waste scheme. But today, everybody accepts that it's a wonderful social scheme. So it is extremely difficult. We have a language which really distinguishes between what we give it to the poor and what we give it to the rich. If you give a payout by the government to the poor is called subsidy, you get irritated. Payout to the rich is called incentive. You feel want more of it. If a loan is rescheduled, for a poor man you call it loan rescheduling. For a corporate man you said corporate debt restructuring. What a beautiful word it is. It's called non-performing asset. How can there be an asset which doesn't perform? I really don't understand. So if an asset has to perform, if it doesn't perform, it can't be an asset. But we have a non-performing asset. We call rating of a loan. What a beautiful word all this. But when you give it to the poor, then you have all kinds of nonsense words which create a public opinion against it. So how do you create an chase this hostile ecosystem which doesn't allow anything to the flow to the common man? So that's the biggest thing. I'm not telling there is no potential. Vishwasat was rightly talking about taxes. I pay 30% income tax as a university professor. One day I got a doubt how much Mukesh Ambani pays as a tax, corporate income tax. Well, he may pay other tax, I don't know. I searched on the Google, I know one day Business Line carried it on the page 1, that effective tax paid by Reliance Industries is hardly 3%. So I pay 10 times more. So Mukesh Ambani pays, you can also type in Google and try to get the correct figure also. As I remember, it is less than 4%, effective tax rate. Latest Oxfam report says 0.5% tax on the latest increase of value of assets of Gautam Adani between 2017 and 21 is sufficient to fund 50 lakh teachers for 1 year. 50 lakh teachers for 1 year. So, as Vishwa Reddy rightly pointed out, so paying taxes itself is a big social responsibility. But how much really people pay the taxes? I am paying taxes because I have no other option to pay, to do, because the tax is deducted at source. So my point is, how do you come out of all these riddles? It's good to create a regulatory institution. I really appreciate. And we have to learn why this has failed. As far as I remember, it was started in Brazil in 2003. Subsequently, it was started, social stock was started in South Africa, I think UK, Portugal, Canada. I think majority of them have failed. So we'll have to, we have to reinvent the wheel. I don't know. How do you really, the SEBI, people who have come from SEBI should guide us, should educate us on how do we overcome all these challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I'll pick up one point that if you take any of these large non-profit organizations where one of them I also belong to, the donors are actually not individuals. These are corporates. Most of them are actually US based. They know this organization for a long time, so there is already a trust factor set up. And while it is so common to see that the high net worth individuals or the ultra high net worth individuals in US and other parts of the world are usually more forthcoming to donate for whatever the causes they believe in, it is still not a very common mindset in this country, which is a potential opportunity. So maybe as a question, as a follow-up, what do you think could be something that we can collectively do to change that mindset? Because the CSR Act is mostly driven through companies' profit money coming in, whereas the Social Security Exchange platform is an opportunity not just for the companies to donate, but also for the individuals to come forward, which is going to be an excellent opportunity. So any thoughts from your mindset around how can we probably influence those HNIs to come forward and start to use this as a platform for donation?
I think, yeah, that's a very important question about, you're specifically asking about Indians and our behavior, am I right? About the very nature of giving. And in society, the first thing, I lived in the United States for almost 12 years, came back, and I've seen beggars all over. The greatest recipient of personal social responsibility is the beggars on the streets and beggars in front of temples and mosques. So we like to feel blessed by direct giving. But this concept of giving Number one, I've been brought up, India was a poor country. I've been brought up with the belief, you're responsible for yourself, then you're responsible for your parents, then you're responsible for your brothers, then you're responsible for your village or your community or your neighborhood. And when you have fulfilled all those responsibilities, you give outside. Now, that is one of the blocks in Indian mindset, because Indian social circles are larger and they are multi-layered, whereas American social circles are very tiny. I have you, my son, and my wife, and my son left for college. It's just me and my wife. And there are no beggars on the street, there are no beggars, poor people to give, and I'm highly educated. One of the things is the social networks in India are very, very wide. So therefore, we don't find an NGO on the internet, or I do research. I have a lot of ways to give right in my neighborhood, right in among my relatives or friends and things like that. And that is probably the reason, and that is not a wrong thing. And that could probably why Americans seem to donate more than Indians in India.
Thank you. I think it's a great analogy to say that we always start with charity at home and then to the extended family. Then we think about it by the time we already completed 30, 40 years out of our life. So I would like to probably end this session because we are so keen to hear from the experts around the social stock exchange opportunity and how we put this together. For me, the excitement is there are so many non-profits in India, and they are always looking at how they can make an impact with the donations they get. Unless they get a donation, they cannot make an impact through the cause that they are trying to drive. Whether it is on the health sector, education sector, livelihood sector, and the most important that the entire world is focused now is on the environment sector. How can we ensure that these non-profits that are already existing and looking for fundraising can make the best out of it? So I'll end with a small anecdote that probably connects back to the story that we heard about spilling the milk. So I'll probably end the story with the same, that I always believe in it. This goes back to a story we always say, once upon a time, the king believed that everything that he is doing is positively received by his kingdom, the people in the kingdom, and they're all quite trustworthy. And he felt that the policies he has stated, the rulings that he is passing, is all embraced by the entire country that he is ruling. And the minister has to tell him the story that that's not very true, and I can prove that to you if you allow me to do that. And the story goes that the king announced that there is a event that they are performing for the god. It's called the yajna, and the yajna needs a lot of milk. And they would like to have every family donate 1 liter of milk, where they have to bring it in a closed container, and one after the other, the person actually gets into the room and then pour the milk into a much bigger container, because the yajna is supposed to be required to be done with a bigger container. Many of you know this story. When the entire citizens completed the activity of getting their donation of the 1 liter milk, and the minister takes the king back to that place to open that big vessel to see only the entire vessel filled with water. Sir, it goes back to the to the statement that you made earlier, that as a responsible citizen, it is up to us as individuals to pour that 1 liter of milk, the goodness, back into the community. It could be the time that you offer, it could be the money that you offer, it could be the knowledge that you offer. We can collectively make an impact if we do that together. With a 1.4 billion population, if each of them can donate just 1 rupee a day, we can just eradicate any of the health challenges that we are facing today, the education challenges we are facing today. I think hopefully the social security exchange could be one of those catalysts that will drive the individuals to come forward apart from the corporates. And having said that, back to you for closure of this session.
That was a very invigorating session, sir. Thank you very much, Rameshji, and Vishweshwaridi Garu and Professor Nageshwar Garu. I think we've raised a lot of questions and we still need to get the answers for these. Broadly, from what we understand, we have various kinds of givers by and large in our society, whether it's in Indian context or worldwide, but primarily in India, we have people who just want to give for the sake of giving. They really don't bother to find out where their money goes. Like a lot of people who put money in the hundis, do they really go and check whether their money is being used and for what it's being used? It's just hoarding up, we all know that. And then we have others who are interested to give and perhaps are curious to know where their money is being used. We have those who will be more interested to part with some of the excess that they have, provided there is a worthy enough exciting cause, I think. And we have the other last segment where nobody, they don't really bother. So we'll tap into the 3 and 4 and see where this goes. Thank you very much, sir, for a wonderful session. And to get some of the answers to the questions raised today by Professor Nageshwar Garu, Vishweshwaridi Garu and Rameshi, I think we will now invite our keynote speakers. Before that, I request we will go on to answer a few more questions, sir. Thank you so much.
I'll go ahead. No issues. Thank you. Please. Thanks, Hemant ji, for giving way, especially after very eloquent speakers that spoke before me, and some hard-hitting questions being made to us. So between the two of us, we'll try to answer some of them. So yes, so we are all aware, 3 years ago, this journey of social stock exchange has started. So I'll just try to give you a brief idea of how we tackled it or how we understood the issue to be. So we are here not because we are educated, we are here because we want to learn more. Both of us, and especially speaking for me, social stock exchange has been a great learning. For the simple reason we come from a financial world. We don't know what social stock exchange or what charity is otherwise, other than what we do at home or like Saab mentioned, what we do in our neighborhood. So for us, and especially for SEBI, it was a very alien concept. So when the announcement was made in the parliament, it took us 2 days to understand what it actually is, and 3 months to get our head around to say how do we tackle this problem. So it was a creature which we didn't understand, and we have to start learning to understand. So we have to unlearn some of our financials to learn something which is on the social side. So we had, fortunately, we had 2 groups, and Hemantji was part of that exercise, where we had people from the social sector collaborate with each other to bring about a framework that we have today. So this framework today consists of 4 main pillars. So one is the social stock exchange per se, that's a platform. Then we have the social enterprises, and the other side we have the donors, and then we have something called as the social auditors. So the framework basically talks about giving visibility to social enterprises that satisfy. So there's eligibility criteria that it should satisfy some of those 15, 17 goals that have been set out, which is also the developmental goals that the government is aligned with. So those are the eligible entities other than finance or something that Mr. Hemantji will take on later on. We are giving visibility to these social enterprise. So a social enterprise or a social institution or NGO would be a highly localized structure. So it is gaining popularity or gaining its base from the geographical region in which it is operating. What the social stock exchange is achieving to do is give it a wider spread beyond the region. So that is what is one of the expectations or one of our expectations from the social stock exchange experiment. Having said that, so there will be definitely not 34 lakh NGOs that would be eligible to list on the stock exchange. So we have put in some kind of a threshold. Those that will qualify will be able to do. So we want to start at a structure where we will be able to manage, and probably gaining from experience will try to cater to a wider audience of social enterprise. Social stock exchange, so we have two of them, the BSE and the NSE. BSE here already has the recognition, final recognition for a social stock exchange. The governing board on the social stock exchange is already in place. And the news that Mr. Hemant Gupta has shared with us is that by next week we'll have at least 2 to 3 of them registered on the social stock exchange. So that's a very encouraging news for us at SEBI as well as for the investing community on this side. So the third aspect is the donors. So what do we have for the donors? So we're giving people who are located within various geographies of India a flavor of what their money can do in any area of their interest or any regions of where they have come from or they have their roots from. So a person from here who is now relocated to Mumbai or various parts of India but wants to do something good to his own village or a geographical location that he belonged to, this is where is the platform that enables him, other than his social contacts, to come on a platform like social stock exchange and reach out and make the difference, that small change that he would like to see. So in the morning I was part of a session with the Abhaya Foundation where one Swami had come. So he talked about his journey from birth, and he also had an interesting analogy to say how he would like his obituary to be written. So he said that the obituary that is to be written should be filled in from the birth to what he has done until death for the society and not for himself. So this is an opportunity that donors will have to create that change which would keep them in the minds, not of them, their relatives, their friends, but also of the society at large, or the lives that they touch by their small change or by giving their time, effort, resources, and not just money. So it also requires people here, we have seen they're not here for money or they are not directly giving money. However, they have made their services available pro bono. So those are the efforts that will go on to make this particular social stock exchange experiment a great success. So to begin with, I would say we are beginning this exercise with a lot of millstones around our neck. First, the social stock exchange does not have a ATG exemption. It also does not have what you can say an eligibility under the CSR. So both CSR money as well as donation money of ATG exemption is not eligible. But it is heartening to note that it is only in Hyderabad. This is the second session I am leading in Hyderabad. I am being in Hyderabad, where I have heard that both these are not a constraints for investment by donors in the social stock exchange, and it's something unique. So this is not something. These are not the noises that we have heard around in Mumbai or Delhi or any other circles. This is one of the first places where we have seen that these two are not the impediments for making the social stock exchange a great success. So this is the third pillar. So the donors is something that we would like to cater to. From the social stock, from the SEBI perspective, we also want to address donors' concern of how and where their money is being put. So we just heard somebody speak about India is not less on giving. So if you look at the collective wealth that is there in the hundis of Hindu temples here, I think that can far surpass the GDP of India itself. So given that, we are not wary of giving. I think what we are more concerned about is to see that your money is working where you have intended it to work. So as long as we don't have a trust structure, this will fail. So suppose like it was mentioned that we are doing something good in society, we are doing something good in our housing society, in our neighborhood. That is because we know that this is happening. It's happening right before your eyes. So it's an instant first, shouldn't say gratification, but it's a validation of your money being put to good use. So that is the instant realization that money is working. However, when you come to give your money to a person whom you don't know personally, then you try to look at structures which will validate that your money is being put to good use. So one of the structures we try to work out in the social stock exchange is have a class of auditors or social impact assessment auditors who will give you the third party validation to say that your money has worked where it was intended to. So suppose I am an NGO, it's very simple to see this in principle to act. So if I'm an NGO and I have taken money from a particular donor, it is one thing for me to say that this is how your money I have used. And it's another thing for Mr. Hemant to step in and say, look, you gave Jeevan this money and this is how I have seen it work. So these are two different statements altogether. You would probably trust Mr. Hemant's statement over mine because he's giving you a third party independent valuation or validation of what I have done. So this is exactly the principle that we are trying to work out, and we have put in a principle of social auditor. So what we are trying to create, so we heard some words and keywords I took down. It's about catalyst. So what we are trying to do through this exercise is act as a catalyst to see that there is more social change, to have the country develop towards having a better social environment. We get to the desired social outcome with or without government help, but with public participation and with people having gratitude towards how we are doing the good in the society. So again, as I said earlier, we are still in a learning phase. It's just an experiment and it's a laboratory like we had in the morning. We are trying to just work out this particular solution for the government of India. We are not at all claiming that this is the perfect solution, but this is something that the best we could think of, and we will definitely look for inputs from the audience and from people who are here, more learned than us, more socially aware than us, more socially impactful than what we are here today, to take some lessons from here so that we can better this particular product and make it a far more successful product than the 18 countries that they tried and failed. So we won't let social stock exchange be a failure in India, because we have the support of the Indians who are known to give the most back to the society in general. And with that, I would hand over for the rest of the technical sessions to Mr. Hemant Gupta. Right. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeevan ji. Yeah?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I actually have a brief presentation that will come on eventually, but before that, I wanted to partly respond to some of the questions that were raised in the earlier session. The first caveat is, I don't think any exchange, social or otherwise, can replace divine rate of return, right? We are not attempting to do that. So the money that goes into hundis will continue to go into hundis. Second is that, to Professor Nageshwar's point, this is, and what Jeevan ji also said, this is not creating a platform. This is actually creating an ecosystem, right? And creating that ecosystem will involve all of us to work together. It is not something that the government can create, right? It will involve donors, it will involve NGOs, it will involve for-profit enterprises, it will involve people in the middle, social auditors, people who will make the whole thing function, right? And the third thing is that broadly, when we went about architecting this whole thing, we followed principles of transparency and inclusivity, which means that there should be as much transparency as possible in what is happening on the social stock exchange, and equally, if not more importantly, what's happening with your money. And also inclusivity in the sense of being able to include NGOs, for-profit enterprises, different kinds of investors or donors on the social stock exchange. The questions, so I did go through this book, and there's some very good questions. All of them don't have answers, probably 80% do have answers. But I think they form a basis of how this thing is going to evolve. So please keep the questions coming. And I broadly break up my talk into two parts. One would be that that brief presentation that kind of lays out the details of the social stock exchange 1.0. And then we would be very happy to answer any questions, because I think that's an equally, if not more important part of the session, right? So if, yeah, thanks. Can you guys see this? Should we shift? You're good? Okay, all right. Okay, so I some of this stuff has been covered, right? So July budget speech of 2019 is when Honorable Minister Nirmala Sitharaman announced the social stock exchange. Her words was, under the regulatory framework of SEBI for listing social enterprises and voluntary organizations working for the realization of social welfare objectives. And I think a few things that we kind of feel which went into why this was done is that we have these social development goals to achieve by 2030. That's not going to happen with the current amount of funding that goes into the social development sector. And we do want to tap into other sources of funding. And the social stock exchange is not meant as a replacement for an existing source of funding. It's meant to bring additional funding in, right? Second is that, and for people of you who are from the NGO world, there's been a lot of over-correction or over-compliance of regulations that have been imposed on the NGOs, partly because of some bad fish in the pond. And perhaps the social stock exchange is one way to create a platform that creates that transparency that will ease some of those regulations. But I think these things are early days. We have to wait for it to evolve. If you can go to the next slide. Right, so as Jeevan ji said, first a working committee was formed. The working committee had a variety of, came out with a fat 60-page report, had a variety of very important things that they said, but the three key takeaways I had from it was, one, that the social stock exchange is not a separate stock exchange, okay? It's an existing, it's a segment in the existing stock exchanges, BSE and NSE. Two, because the stock exchange construct is something that is not something that NGOs and social impact people are familiar with, we should have a fund in place that builds capacity of these organizations and these donors to understand and leverage this social stock exchange. And this is something that's work under progress. And three, recognizing that at least for the not-for-profit side, money is given in the form of donations and grants, which at that point did not have a space in the on the stock exchange, creating a new instrument called zero coupon, zero principal instrument, not a bond, a zero coupon, zero principal instrument, which essentially means zero coupons, no interest getting paid to the person who's giving the money. Zero principal means you're not getting your principal back. In other words, it's a donation being given for a social return, okay? Subsequent to that, to operationalize the recommendations, sorry, go back. Yeah. Subsequent to that, to operationalize the recommendations of the working committee, a technical group was formed. And broadly, what the technical group did is, the first thing you have to do in order to come onto the social stock exchange is prove that you're a social enterprise, which is the first point, establish primacy of social intent, right? The second is what Jeevan ji was mentioning, that as a part of being on a stock exchange, you now have to do periodic disclosures about events that are happening in your organization that could have a potential impact at the monies you've been given. Third, and the third one is not, some of these things have not been done anywhere else in the world. Third was the concept of a social auditor, right? And this goes back to one of the points that Professor Nageshwar made. How do I know what is happening with my money? What if, what Jeevan ji said, I'm sitting in Mumbai, I've given money to an NGO in Andhra, how will I know what's happening with my money? There's a third party, a social auditor, who's a certified person, who has passed through a process that validates the fact that they have the capability to carry out a social audit, who are certifying the work that's being done by the NGO, right? And the last point is that there is a construct in the existing SEBI regulations called the alternate investment fund. The category 1 alternate investment funds are something called social venture funds, which we recommended are altered to also allow NGOs to participate in the whole fundraising activities on a collaborative basis. Okay. So broadly, these things laid the foundation of what is the social stock exchange 1.0. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask as we go along. Right? Now we can go to the next slide. So quickly, there were a series of regulations that came out. One, declaring ZCZP to a valid instrument, setting up the framework of the social stock exchange, altering the listing regulations, the reporting regulations, and creating a governing council, like Jeevanji said, which will oversee. So both the stock exchanges have to have a governing council with a defined composition that will oversee the operation of the social stock exchange. Next. Here we've attempted to capture why should you come on to the social stock exchange, either as an issuer or as an NGO or a for-profit enterprise, and why as an investor or a donor you should come. Broadly, a lot of these points have been covered in earlier discussions. But from a issuer point of view, right, you get a platform that gives you national visibility. How many people here have demat accounts? Can you raise your hands? Okay. So, because paucity of time, I'll not. So basically, you have demat accounts for a variety of reasons, which include the fact that sitting in Hyderabad, you can invest in any company across the country. 2, you get regular reports on what's happening in that company that you put money in, right? And 3, you get liquidity. So if you want to exit at any point, you are able to sell your shares and exit. And the stock exchange actually provides a platform through which you can do these 3 activities. The social stock exchange, as of now, fulfills 2 of those requirements. 1, it allows the investor to invest in organizations across the country. It allows the issuer or the person who's raising money to access investors across the country. Second, it allows the NGO or the issuer to establish credibility about the work they've done, their track record, and it allows the investor to invest in organizations that have a proven track record. 3, it allows you to do so both for the investor and the issuer at a very minimal price, right? So as an example, of some of you who are NGOs, if you're raising CSR funds through agents or third parties, there's oftentimes a large 10%, 20% commission that you have to pay, right? The economics of the stock exchange are far, far cheaper than that. You will not have to pay such amounts. Okay, so that was the theory, right? How does it all work in practice? Like I said, first, you establish as an organization that you are a social enterprise, and I'll get into each of these in more detail. Once you establish you're a social enterprise, then your paths diverge. On the left side is the NPO, on your right side is the NGO part, and on your left side is the for-profit part. On the for-profit side, we did not create anything additional. We said as a for-profit enterprise, you will list on the stock exchange just like any other for-profit enterprise does, right? On the not-for-profit side, which is, right, what we basically said is that, one, you have to register yourself on the social stock exchange, and I'll get into details of how you register, and then you can raise money. You can raise money again through the zero coupon zero principle or all the social venture funds. I think Professor Nageshwar had a question on this part. So how do you prove you're a social enterprise? There are 3 filters. One is you have to be working in one of 15 areas, next slide, which are given here. Okay, these broadly are a collection of what exists in Schedule 7 today, for those who are familiar with CSR. as well as the SDG goals and Niti Aayog area priority areas. Right? So we try to create a superset so that we don't miss anybody. Go back. Right? So first, you have to be working in one or more of those areas. Second, you have to have 2/3 of your work in one or more of those areas. Right? So, and keeping in mind, NGOs may not always be measured by in terms of revenue. That 2/3 can be either in terms of your income, your expenses, or your beneficiaries. Right? And these, right? And then we barred some organizations. The third filter was that political, religious, housing companies that don't work with affordable housing, professional trade bodies, corporate foundations were excluded at least for now, so that genuine organizations or organizations that genuinely need funding are able to access funds. And additionally, enterprise should target the underserved. Okay, so now you passed that test of being a social enterprise, and you're an NGO. So what we did is, for an NGO, if you think about for 95% of the NGOs, fundraising typically happens at a project level, right? You have a project, you want to set up a school, right? Or you want to set up a primary care, healthcare center, whatever your project is, and you raise funds for that. Now, one NGO can have multiple projects happening at the same time. In the normal stock exchange context, every time you come to the stock exchange, you have to give complete documentation and then raise funds. We said that if an NGO has 15 projects, why should they have to come to the stock exchange 15 times and give their organization documents? Rather than that, you register once. Right? So you register your NGO once on the social stock exchange, provide documentation, and again here, if you look at the criteria, eligibility criteria, it's broadly we followed the CSR eligibility criteria. We've not tried to create anything new, right? Society, trust, or Section 8 company, track record of 3 years, 12A ATG, valid ATG. And the only thing we did is we added the fact that you have to have a minimum size. Recognizing the fact that, remember I talked about disclosures in the beginning? That being on the social stock exchange requires additional reporting requirements, additional compliance requirements, which for smaller organizations may be a problem. So why don't we start with getting some of the larger organizations on the social stock exchange, and then we'll slowly move to the smaller ones. And just to give you a comparison on the corporate side, I think we have 7 lakh companies registered in India, and I think 7,500 are on the stock exchange. Right? Okay, so that's what you need to do to register. Next, please. And then for BSc, since we already have the final approval, here's how you go about registering. Right? We have a portal. www.bscsocialstockexchange.com, or you can write to ssc@bscindia.com to express your interest. We'll come back to you with a checklist of documentation that is required, following broadly CSR principles. And then you log into a listing portal, our listing portal, submit your documentation, we'll verify the documentation, and once everything is okay, you're registered. Okay. So you've registered now, very good, but now you have to start fundraising, right? So how do you raise funds? Next slide. Right, again the process is, so the process for fundraising mirrors what happens on the corporate side to an extent. The first thing you have to do is you have to create an offer document, or a document that it's like a project proposal document, right? It broadly lays out what are you trying to do, where are you trying to do it, how long will you take, what will be the impact you'll create, how much money do you need, right? And what are your start line, end line, midline, all right? Various criteria that you normally put into a project proposal. We are at BSc in the process of creating that offer document template, and we'll come back shortly on that. And then you come to the, send the offer document to us. We will put it on, if everything's okay with the offer document, We'll put it on our website for 21 days. And then we'll open the issue. Investors can come, invest in the zero coupon, zero principal instrument. And then the issue closes, right? So that's broadly, it's reasonably simple. It is not a new process for you because you guys are already doing it for your proposal documents that you do to today for corporates, etc. Okay, next. Right, some of the key criteria, and again it answers some of the questions that were raised earlier. Issue size minimum is 1 crore. Minimum subscription amount of 2 lakhs. Okay, here the philosophy behind that 2 lakh was that in the beginning, let's get people who understand the implications of giving money on a platform rather than giving every small people to start donating. And over time, as the stock exchange becomes more mature, we will lower that barrier threshold. No. Issue has to be in demat form, just like the shares you hold, it has to be in demat form. Right? Minimum issue subscription required is 75%, and so the zero coupon zero principle is attached to a project. Once the project gets over, the instrument also terminates. Okay. Now next. So we spoke about disclosures. This slide actually gives a list of the disclosures that are required at the time of registration, on an annual basis, on a quarterly basis, and then on an event basis. We can give you more detail. I don't want to take up the time of this session to go over details of this, but if you guys are interested offline, we can give you more details on this. Okay. One of the key things we introduced with the social stock exchange is the concept of a social auditor, so that investors, just like a financial auditor certifies the performance of a company, the social auditor certifies the social performance of the project, of the money you're putting in. And there is standards that are being defined by ICAI, have been defined by ICAI. There is a certification course that is about to be launched by the National Institute of Securities Management. And I think it's not just CAs who can become social auditors. People who have a social background can also become social auditors. Right, so that's, and these are just some screens from our application at BSc. So that's broadly a deep dive into what the social stock exchange is, operationally speaking. Okay. No, you can close. Right, thank you very much. So questions? Yes. Can we get a mic, please? A couple of mics, maybe that.
Yeah, we have the session open for questions now.
Hello, hello.
Thank you very much.
Else here. If I may ask few questions, maybe it is there from the audience too. If I'm an individual donor, I ended up writing a check for 10 crores through this as an opportunity, and it has gone to one of the non-profits that has asked for the funds. Will they still be good to give me an ADG certificate because they are a non-profit?
So as of now, okay, the official is that as of now, funds raised through the social stock exchange are not eligible to get an ATG certificate. Okay.
Okay, so even though the non-profit is eligible to give it, they still cannot get you an ATG certificate.
Yeah, that's the official stand.
Okay.
I mean,
So like Hemant said, as of now, this is the situation. So budget is just some days away. We have taken up this issue with the government. We'll wait to see what the government would like to do on this particular issue. And we are hopeful because the outlook for the government is to showcase this particular experiment in the G20 summit that we would be hosting in September 2023. So if it were to be a success, I think one of the key tools or items that we need in our toolbox is a ATG exemption and the CSR eligibility for all activities on the social stock exchange. So if these two pieces are clicked, I think this would be a runaway success. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm wearing a hat of a non-profit to ask the question, primarily because we know that Millop, Keto, and so many other apps are already available for doing crowdfunding for a certain cause, that too in a very short time. But it only goes to so many people. But this is more visible at the nation level. And I'm hoping that if it is tax exemptable, then we will be able to draw a lot more attraction for especially the high network opportunity and platform. So if there is a way we can do it, nothing like it. On that same note, if I have put up a project as one of the non-profits and I have started to actually raise the funds, let's say my initial goal was 10 crores and the project became successful, can I come back and then do an extension of the fundraising, or do I need to register this as a separate project and then do that again?
So if you're to 2 more schools, right, you will have to come as register as a separate fundraise, separate instrument.
Okay, got it. Thank you. And maybe the last question on this is, can the NRIs also donate through social stock exchange while they are physically outside the country?
So for foreign funds flowing into charitable institutions, you know you have to cross the FCRA hurdle. So as long as entities already have a FCRA permit or a registration, it should not be a problem. But I think there's only one obstacle, which is that the money should go directly to the institution. So there's no wire media required. So as long as you're satisfying that particular condition in the FCRA, you should be good to go. But it's not yet final. So if you look at the structure of the AIF, the Social Venture Fund, probably you may have an obstacle there because you are having an intermediary in between. But if you are investing directly into the fund that is through the ZCZP, that should be good to go.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, please.
So I have some very basic layperson's questions, sir. The fact that HNIs would not contribute or would want to contribute, but since there's no trust and transparency, they're holding back. How did we arrive at that insight, sir? Was it like...
How did we arrive at what?
At that insight, that high net worth individuals are waiting for trust and transparency in the system, which is why they are holding back what they want to donate.
I'm basing this insight based on my interactions solely in Hyderabad. So this is something, some unique experience I have had. So we have had these sessions, awareness campaigns, or where we try to popularize or just to try to reach this idea of social stock exchange to a mass media, as well as through people reach out programs like this. Especially when interaction with EQUIPPP and others, we came to know that probably 80G and the fact that there's a CSR ineligibility, these two things are not a hindrance for people to put their money. So the logic that has been told to us is that people are doing this for passion. So there are some people, even there are some corporates who are doing CSR more than 2% of their CSR. So it's just because CSR is mandatory, it's only 2% that's mandatory. If anything you are spending more than 2% is above the mandatory limit. You are not required to do, but you are still doing it because that is your passion. So too on the personal side, most people that I believe this has been the experience in Hyderabad, that they are not interested in 80G exemptions. However, they would like to do good to society, give back to society from where they have come from, where their roots are, because you have risen, or you're risen from those roots, you have gone away. So probably there is also a guilt that I am away from a place which has given me that uplift. So why not do good back to the society where I came from? So this primarily, I believe, is the prime function of why we say that not many people would be enamored with the 80G exemption or by a CSR eligibility. This is the primary feedback we have got from it.
Can I just add to what Jeevan ji said?
Yes, sir.
So, the uh, the trust and transparency and the whole social audit function. So if you look at the way high net worth individuals donate today, it's mostly to, as Jeevan ji said, either to their Janmbhumi, right, or related to a network that they have of friends and family who are able to recommend, right. The idea behind the social stock exchange is to democratize the process, to allow them access to a wider network. But the moment you step outside your comfort zone, how will you participate with, right? And therefore the social audit function, to allow you to know, give you transparency into what's.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any more questions? Yeah.
Hello, I have one question. It was very interesting, the social stock exchange concept which you told me. I have one question, rather a suggestion, which many of me, Group 26 leader. So, if there is some, means, can we contribute to some work? I mean, something happened in neighboring countries also, like, you know, Sri Lanka has gone through a very bad stage, or maybe Bhutan or Nepal. There also we should contribute. That's my thoughts. Means that should also become eligible, not immediately, but in times to come.
No, I think it's a great thought. Okay, lend the model to other countries also.
So, just to supplement to what Mr. Hemant ji has said. So, if we are talking of a G20 summit, it's obvious that it's not only 20 countries that are going to be having their eyes on that session when we have it in September. So, the session on social stock exchange is our showcase event to the world, and especially to the emerging countries and on our eastern neighbors, that this is an experiment that we can try to make a success with. So that is how we are looking at it, and we have still some 7 or 8 months to go till we reach our goal. But we are confident with the way the feedback we have got from people, that we will be able to tick all the boxes to make it successful. So once we have done it a success in India, it's very easy for us to export this model to any part of the world. And we are known to be very good exporters, right? So if you are aware, the NPCI has floated the BHIM app platform. So UPI, Unified Payment Interface, is a platform now which not only in India, but in 19 countries of the world, it has been adopted. And it is being actively considered by the US as well as by the Europe. So we believe we should be the next export to other than resources, human resources from Hyderabad to US for BPOs. The social sector side, we should be the first ones to do this.
Yeah, so I couple of questions. One is, of course, just want to way of crowdfunding. Basically, it's trying to raise money from the various donors through crowdfunding. How the social stock exchange is different from that? That's one. Second is that when we are talking about that, it's a zero coupon, zero principal, instrument. And then we have to close this instrument, or this instrument is terminated the moment the fund is closed or the activity is done. How do you really terminate that? What is it that, you need to do for the termination? Is there, so probably a little more clarity on that would be helpful.
The disclosure requirements, the social audit requirements, the transparency requirements don't exist on those platforms, right? And therefore you actually get greater visibility into what's happening, greater trust into what's happening, not just with the project, but with the organization. The second is that usually there's a 7 to 15%, in some cases actually much higher, but there is usually a cost associated with that whole exercise, right? Which is far lower when you talk about the social stock exchange, right? And the third is that ultimately These platforms, actually I guess I'm repeating the second point, we give you very limited feedback on what's happening. And that feedback has to, and perhaps maybe they'll up their act and start giving better feedback, but they'll end up charging more also. That was one. On the zero coupon, zero principal terminating, Jackie, you want to take that?
So there's no point looking at it from any other way. So why we are saying you need to list it, because as long as it is continued to be listed, the NGO's demonstration of how the funds are being put to use will continue to be reflected on the stock exchange. So if a project has ended after 5 years and the same NGO now needs to work on another project, it becomes easier for the NGO to tell people, look, I raised money earlier and this is what my performance has been. So here I am coming again, please look at my track record which is on the stock exchange. So it becomes easier for NGOs to raise money if you already have a demonstrable ability of raising and utilizing people's money and putting it on this thing. While you can have projects that end, you can also have add-on projects. So you are already working on a project and you need to have an extension of the project. So you suppose you have a 500-bed hospital, you can do another 100-bed funding through this particular aspect. So this is not something that ends its life after 5 years. You can continue to extend by issuing new ZCZP, raising more funds for the same particular purpose or focus area that you already identified. So it is a instrument. If you want, it can be in perpetuity if you are going to extend the life of that particular project to life.
I have a quick question if there's time. There's a cost of raising money, and you had mentioned that if you go to the CSR route, there are agents and brokers who charge 10% or so, which is expensive. But if you go to an initial public offering, it costs 2-3 crores advertised in few newspapers and all that. So how is it cheaper to raise funds through social stock exchange? Because if I advertise, if they want to know me, I have to advertise. It costs money. The second is more of a suggestion than a question. You mentioned 21 days window for the issue to be open.
For the offer document to be on the website for feedback.
So usually in a public IPO, there's a start date and an end date. In this, can the end date be open-ended? That's actually a suggestion. Because if I don't raise my 75%, not only I don't get the funds, I lose the money, 10 lakhs, I put on a newspaper advertisement, I lose that. I'm already here. So I lose my investment of raising funds also I lose. So that my suggestion is to keep it longer open, and one more suggestion is, let the government fund some of the advertisement. Let the government or your BSE or NSE fund my, otherwise it's like a initial public offering. To raise 10 crores, I have to spend 1 crore of newspaper advertisement.
So let me answer the second one first, because easy. Project clock has to start, right? You've said something in your offer document, I'll take 3 years to do this, right? That clock for 3 years has to start at some point. We can't keep it indefinitely open. What that period is, whether it's like currently today you have 7 days IPO, you have 9 days IPO, 3 days IPO, right? It obviously is not 3 days or 5 days or 7 days. It has to be something longer than that. There's also the concept of ASBA that comes in the moment you come onto the stock exchange, where the banks get involved in locking money for a period of time because you have subscribed. There's also the longer you keep the issue open and don't start the project, the guys who came in early are at a disadvantage, right? So they've put in their money, but nothing's going to happen to them. The impact is not going to start getting generated because you're still waiting for the rest of the funders to come in. So there are pros and cons to how long you want to keep the offer period open. And we currently, based on what the governing council, as the BSC governing council has said, are looking at a 3-week period with a 3-week extension. We are proposing this. We still have to come to consensus on it. So that's on the offer period. Right? Coming back, the first part you asked on the fundraising bit, clearly there are expenses related to fundraising that will require to be spent by the person who's willing to raise the money. What we have done is, so there are two additional fees that normally come. One is the stock exchanges fees and the second is the merchant banker fee. Right? What we've tried to do is get the merchant banker out of the way. So there is no merchant banker to this issue. And the second is the stock exchange fee, if you compare it to what happens in a regular IPO, is far, far smaller.
Yeah, we have a couple of questions here. Just
Yeah.
Well, that is, yeah.
So I think just to give you a flavor of what.
Yeah.
So for institutions that really are bereft of funds, there would be a case for putting out some kind of material outside in the public domain to popularize that. But our only idea to have it listed or registered on the stock exchange is that it will automatically get advertised. So the moment an NGO says that I have got registered on Bombay Stock Exchange, Social Stock Exchange, it gives it a different kind of credibility, a different kind of visibility. So it's a curiosity. After all, advertisement creates curiosity in you to just test the model. So if that is created, I think we have reached there somehow. However, if there is a requirement to give a fill up, then I believe the capacity building fund, which is co-sponsored by the NABARD, SEBI, and both the exchanges, would able to step in to not only take care of funding costs for advertisements. Suppose the NGO is having challenges paying its audit fees, also having challenges getting into some kind of subsidy on the social auditor fees. That could also be one of the ideas where capacity building fund can be utilized. Again, we are starting this as an experiment. We don't want to get into scandals or how the government money is being misused towards one or other projects. So definitely as we go along, we will be seeing more no's than yes as far as funding is concerned. But definitely the capacity building fund or the governing council for the fund would be looking at case studies and use cases where the fund can be deployed more effectively. It's a 100 crore fund, so it's a sizable fund to begin with. Right, sir?
Correct, absolutely, I missed that part. Just one thought, okay, which got triggered by his question. Just like we have Prasad ji who volunteered to do, yes, some social audit work pro bono, right? Maybe we should try and, we all collectively should try and get some media houses to do some initial publicity for the initial issues pro bono, right? We can,
versus another enterprise which just raised 1 crore or 5 crores. How do you distinguish this? How do you build this differentiation? In case of listed companies, you go by market cap, you go by performance and results and the traction. What is the price discovery?
so not have that advertising.
Yeah, absolutely. We never thought of this, but it's a good idea. We can experiment.
yeah, the next question here.
Yeah, hi, sir. Peter Drucker once said, what is the bottom line when there is no bottom line? So my question on behalf of many HNIs and investors.
So at the SIRC, I had raised this point to the chartered accountants who were present in the conference, that can you guys think of how we can make a zero coupon, zero principal instrument tradable, right? So price discovery on a secondary market basis doesn't exist as of now. However, organization of project discovery, which I think is what you're trying to ask, that what if there are two organizations setting up schools, with similar objectives, with similar requirements, how do I make out which one I should select? So, and perhaps there will be an evolution where there will be a rating system for NGOs, etc., that will evolve in the future. But currently, there are the social audit reports that will be available for NGOs that want to raise funds on the platform. And if you can compare the social audit reports that talk about the impact those organizations have created, that should give you a good flavor of which one you want to pick.
Good evening, sir. Two questions. One is, fine, intent being what it is, of a social objective in the mind. It's still money. It's still money on the table. And so, is there a role for SEBI in regulatory oversight? That's the first question I had. Second was, we have quoted some 18 or 19 countries where this has been rolled out. Now, fine, socio-cultural impacts positioning being what it is, India being different from the other countries, not comparing. But are there any themes?
The first thing that I'd like to say is that for the first time, the social stock exchange experiment is with the securities market regulator. So nowhere in this world this has ever been with a with a securities market regulator. So that talks about one, either I would like to take credit for my organization that it talks good about what SEBI has been doing. So give it some more work so that it can show what credit worthiness it can bring to this particular project. On the other hand, what we have tried to do, and not only SEBI or the working group or the exchanges together, the entire ecosystem. So if you see even GuideStar as a resource, or for that matter the ICAI, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, the Institute of Company Secretaries of India, as well as the ICMA, they have for the first time tried to put together social audit standards. So this has not been an experiment anywhere else in the world. So we believe that if there is a standardization of activities that we are aiming for, it will have a greater likelihood of success rather than we are not having any framework in the first place. So that is why we believe we will be we will be successful, more successful than what the 18 experiments that have failed. This is something that I would like to make as a point, because this is a unique experiment. It has never been done. For SEBI or for the financial market regulator, this is a unique experiment because we had to unlearn our financial concepts to relearn some of the soft side of this particular concept. So, but we think we will get there because we are still on the learning curve, and if we have any more inputs, we are ready to change course to ensure that this is a successful experiment going forward.
Which cannot fit the conventional social enterprise.
Okay, it is over, right? And there is the concept of intended impact, unintended impact, etc. Right? I think the idea here, at least in the initial phases, is to be more outcome focused rather than impact focused, if you understand where I'm going with this, right? Where there are indicators that the NGO has said that I want to be able to make sure that out of 100 children that I'm educating, 90 will pass class 10, right? The idea is here to have more quantifiable outcome indicators that to answer his, right, that you will, as a donor, you will be able to assess that what is the impact getting created, and not so much that because 90 of them passed class 10, they went on to the engineering colleges and therefore they were able to, right, get good jobs in IT services companies. So therefore the outlook is a little more short term and therefore more clearly definable than impact would have been.
Hello. Hi, sir. Thank you for the insightful auditors who are doing impact assessment and social returns on investments for the past 10 years. Can they be included in the ICI network or in the network where these social auditors can also sit in and share the knowledge, what they have done in last few years? That's the first thing. The second thing is, when we talk about the tradable instruments on NSE or BSE, I think any program which is related to carbon pricing or carbon accounts, I think that can be connected with the tradable instruments. So if we are able to do any kind of plantation related thing, I think the carbon credit can be created there and then it will become tradable instrument. So these are the two questions.
So all those still have to pass that 11 module course by NISM and the certificate exam that they have, right?
So I think last Monday, the NISM has already rolled out the course, and they will be inaugurating one of their first sessions on the social auditors. As regards your eligibility to be associated with the Institute of Social Auditors at ICAI, their doors are already open. As far as our eligibility is concerned, you need to be associated with one of their firms. As long as you are with one of their firms and then you pass this social auditor certification at NISM, you should be good to go as far as certifying social audit impact assessment on the social stock exchange. I think it's a ready framework that is available for you right away. So it's not only ICI, so ICI has got the first mover advantage because they were associated with us in the working group as well as in the technical group. The Institute of Company Secretaries as well as the Cost and Works Accountants, the ICMA, these institutes have also set up their Institute of Social Auditor, and they are also coming out with their social audit standards. So you can associate with any one of these three to register yourself and do the certification with NISM, and you should become a social auditor for a social enterprise listed on the social stock exchange.
Hi sir,
my
question.
Sorry, just one. To be honest, currently that's outside the framework. The stock exchanges don't work on the carbon credit exchange or carbon credit tradings. I've actually been trying to see if we can have a social credit framework that gets associated with the social stock exchange rather than restricting it to a carbon credit framework, because there are enough work going on carbon credit side, right? And we don't want to replicate some of that stuff. But as of now, to be brutally honest, very little thinking on that side.
Yes, sir. My question is that funds to the stock exchange till the end of the project to be incurred by the NGO. Is there any estimate, rough estimate from the exchange side, this much of cost can be incurred for raising so much of funds for so much of period? And my second question, sir, the zero coupon and zero principal instrument, when they are not tradable, why should we create a demat account and maintain it for a period of 5 years? Is it not an additional cost burden on the NGO or at the same time the investor to maintain the demat account? Suppose somebody may not have the demat account but intend to subscribe that project, and he has to be open the demat account, then has to make an investment.
So I'll try and answer the first one. So if you look at the costs broadly, I would divide them into 3 or 4 categories, right? You have an initial compliance cost, right, which means that you have to have 3 years audited statements, the certifications that you require to get, which in all likelihood you already have. Okay. The second cost would be for lack of a better word, the fundraising cost, which is the publicity that you may have to do, the advertising that you may have to do to your donors, to your investors of raising funds for that ZCZP. And the third cost would be the stock exchange processing cost, right? So now the stock exchange processing cost itself is very minimal. It's about 30,000 rupees as of now. The first 2 costs are actually organization dependent. So I can't really comment on what your costs will be. For some of the more larger organizations which get registered with corporates, which gets registered with various portals, you probably already have all the compliance work done. And similarly, if you already have a well-developed network of investors or donors, you probably don't need too much external advertising to reach out to them and say, there's this wonderful opportunity. So those are the 3 costs initial upfront, right? There is, however, also an ongoing cost of a ZCZP, which broadly is your compliance, again a compliance cost, where probably the largest would be your annual social audit that you need to get done for the impact that you're creating to ensure that you're in compliance with what you stated in your offer document. As of now, I don't think we have any estimate on those costs, right?
We don't. But I'd give you another perspective since you raised the matter of cost. For every institution, there's always a cost versus benefit analysis, right? So if you are willing to pay 1 rupee cost, but at the end of the game, if you are you are able to garner 10 rupees more, then you are willing to let go 1 rupee, right? So the perspective that I'm offering is, if you are having a cost to sponsor, to register yourself or raise money on the social stock exchange, what the social stock exchange is giving you is a wider audience. It's not just your geography. You are going beyond your geographies. That gives you better audience. So a wider audience beyond your geographies, and thus over a period of time, if you are able to perform, your cost of raising funds over a period of time can be marginal over what your cost is going to be. So that is how we are seeing this pan out as far as this cost aspect is concerned. But as of now, as we also said earlier, if there are costs, like the exchanges have already offered to subsidize most of their costs. So, I'm sure when Hemantji lists out his first registrations in next week, the NGOs would be very happy to note that they have taken a lot of their burden on their books, and it's not going on to the NGOs. So while we have also spoken to some of the professionals as we have interacted, there are people who are, like the gentleman there said, that pro bono work for this will always come. So this is a field where there is more passion for giving money than getting something in return in financial terms. So you are getting a social return, and that is where everybody is passionate about, and that's where everybody's hearts are. So I believe as an experiment, we are looking at it. Yes, cost is an aspect, but over a period of time, when things settle down, the cost is a minor aspect of how much you will be benefiting from listing on the social stock exchange. One thing that NGOs will necessarily have to do is have a very transparent type of accounts. You are open to question or criticism from people that would invest in you. You would be vulnerable to comparisons, because you are not only the ones who are competing for the investors' money. You have like institution just like yours who is also standing next door. So the same 100 rupees that is being invested by a donor can very well go to your sister institution rather than to you. So that is where you need to compete and see the transparency levels will be your game changer. So if you are more transparent than the institution that is competing with you for raising funds, that is where you will win the game. So cost, I believe, in the end of the entire exercise would be a very small aspect of what we are trying to drive benefits from.
I think one of the things social stock exchange is bringing is better governance mechanism. That's one of the key criteria which we are looking at. But currently we have, as I said, three structures: society, trust, and Section 8 companies, which are not for profit. Second thing is they are coming to social stock exchange for specific projects. I think the specific projects under which the fund has been raised, only that accounts like utilization certificate, we as a chartered accountants will come, it will come into the picture. But what is happening on the other side of their spends, we really don't know technically. And we also felt if some society which wanted to get a name, they come and list in social stock exchange, since FCRA guidelines and other things are not, they may use that name and get funds in other way. Doesn't it create some criticism for you that some of the faults done in NGOs will continue coming into stock exchange, only that particular project is completely transparent, other projects what really happening, we will, whether people know or not, that will be a question. Second thing I have not seen, is there any penalties? If somebody has said, we will use the money for so-and-so project, And ultimately, it has not resulted in the project what they need to do. We are seeing that instances coming regularly. Is there any blacklisting? Is there that they can't come back again for funding? Is it something you're assuring to the investors who are putting in money? I think that I have not seen the address. Third thing, sir, I have seen in your subscription minimum 2 lakhs as a criteria. But if you're looking at social angle, why don't you bring it down to 50,000? There are many people who are working in corporate who want to give that 50,000 and coming into social stock exchange. Because 2 lakhs for stock market IPO is good. Because these are not going to be listed for me to buy out again. This is not a listing gain which we are trying to do. Why don't you reduce the subscription to 50,000? These are the 3 points just I thought I'll bring it to your notice.
The money the way in it was intended to. So obviously, we don't want to threaten NGOs that we will take this action, we will take that action. I think it will be for the donor community to punish the NGO enough that it does not get any more funding when it comes on the platform again. That is punishment enough. However, irrespective of that, we still carry the power to move the entire regulatory mechanism to ensure that we take some action, either to we are not looking at restitution of money, but at least to ensure that those that have violated the law are booked under the law. So that is one thing I believe SEBI as an institution has believed that violators of law will not go scot-free. That is one thing. As regards subscription, yes, you have raised a valid issue. So when we deliberated in the committee, the two committees also, we had to start with something. So today, when you are making an investment in such kind of a experiment, you are aware that you are not going to get any money back. So we wanted to see that people who are ordinary people or retail investors, we wanted to see that they are not pulled into this particular experiment and they are hurt. So we have decided that people who are able to expend or lose up to 2 lakh rupees of money in a particular NGO, only those entities we will entertain in the first go, because this experiment has to succeed. And we shouldn't start with a lot of complaints coming from retail investors that this institution has not done anything, because there is no return. So somebody who is sophisticated enough to understand the risk is capable of taking the risk of losing 2 lakh rupees in one experiment or in one NGO is the type of audience we are trying to address. I'm sure as we go along and we bring experience to this particular platform, we should be able to see whether entities smaller than 2 lakhs can also come. But sitting here today, I think another 5 years down the line, if this experiment works and is successful, we should be able to see even success at that point of time. Sure.
I just had one clarification. Keep it simple. Has two projects. One is on the social stock exchange and one is off. Right? They, using the fact that they're listed on the social stock exchange, they raise money for the second project. Right? The first project is going along fine. Right? The annual report, social audit is happy, everybody's happy. Right? But the second project, they're doing some goodal, they're doing whatever, right? To use a technical term. Ultimately, to Jeevanji's point, two things will happen. Right? One is that they're supposed to do annual disclosures and event-based disclosures. So any negative thing that happens on the second project should come as a part of the disclosure and will get highlighted to anybody who's put in money. The second is that again using and if it has, they will get deregistered. There is a process that SEBI and the stock exchanges have to handle entities that have a negative disclosure. Right? The second is that ultimately market forces will take control also. Right? And the next time the guy comes to raise money, it is the process will be far more painful if it is successful. Right?
Just a couple of questions, because we do not have anything else in terms of the CSR or the ATG, nothing else is there. So is it just a passion alone makes them to invest in this? And the second question is, can we parallelly raise the fund for the same project after registering in the social stock exchange?
So what is the second question?
Can an NGO raise the funds for the same project for which they have listed in social stock exchange outside the stock exchange?
So the second audit will be applicable to the entire project, right? So therefore, this audit reports will also have to cover the entire project, not just the part that got raised on the social stock exchange. Right. The first question on what the donor sees. So one is that there is, and Jeevan mentioned this early, there are a lot of people who are looking for credible social investment avenues who don't care about the ATG. Right? It includes high net worth individuals, it includes private institutions, foundations. Right? There are companies that do the 2% but to go beyond the 2%, right? Who do 5% as an example. There are retail investors who can afford the 2 lakhs who are looking for more credible ways of giving donations. Right? They'll get the ATG from from the Indian Cancer Society or somewhere else. Right? But they're looking for a project that in their village, in Andhra, right? And they want to do that not because they want the tax benefit, because they want to do that additional spend and raise funds for that particular cause, that particular location. So I think there are enough alternate channels that will come onto the social stock exchange. At bscindia.com. Hemant is spelled the North Indian way, so there is no H after the T. Right? HEMNT.GUPTA at bscindia.com. You can please write to me with any questions you have.
Thank you very much, sir. And before we conclude the session today, Network, SAN, Chennai and EQUIPPP representatives to please come onto the stage to exchange a memorandum of understanding. SAN has been doing exceptional work and they aid organize the impact assessment process. I request Mrs. Vindhya Dronamraju to please come onto the stage. Post this, we will have the vote of thanks and request you all to join us for splendid high tea that's waiting for us. Thank you very much. I request Shri understanding with EQUIPPP.
Thank you, one and all, taking your time out on this Sunday. It's a bland session. I know that social stock exchange is not a great inspiring subject. It is bland always. But unfortunately, I am there in this particular space since last 2014, a book building platform for localers to raise their conversation with the local governments. They wanted to participate, how they can able to contribute like pro bono, like wanted to give the money or a return on investment or a donation. So we have started. Now we submitted our proposal to the then Minister Garu also, at that time MCA Minister, about a social stock exchange framework, though it is been not successful in many countries. In India, it might definitely successful because our capital market is very, very active and informed investor, educated investors. They might definitely connect to their native place and the cause. So that was the interest we have. We multiple times presented to regulators also. So EQUIPPP is a small web portal. So EQUIPPP is name suggests that expression of equity interest in public and private projects. It's a wider spread of applications. So we realized that the impact assessment is the one which definitely ignites the interest of the public to participate, come back and give the contribution back. So some of such applications we have developed all these days. So our EQUIPPP is a close match to social value investing US-based professors. So we joined with them in 2019. We launched their India book launch. Some of our friends who are here were there also at that time. I should also thank them who are again here. And yeah, at the time we mentioned during that book launch many times about the social stock exchange framework. Now my company EQUIPPP has evolved as a full-time corporate company. We are slowly budding and slowly making our baby steps. The other way, social stock exchange framework is also now making a reality. These kind of knowledge sessions taken out and came. One such friend is Ramesh Garu, whom I met him in 31st December in person, discussed about this subject. Thanks to Lax who has introduced. So he has taken a commitment and he wanted to, because of him only I just initiated and slowly made this a small gathering. And thank you one and all for joining this today. I thank Ravi Prasad Garu and Sundari Garu for their association who are leaving now. So they are knowledge partners because they will the first people who are going to get the customers if some traction comes, if the government is going to announce some incentives for this framework. You will be the first person to make some service kind of an offering. But it's good that you are here. I'm so thankful to you. Because of you only we got this facility to present this initiative, sir. Thank you so much. You are always there for me. I know that. Thank you so much. Ramesh Garu, thank you so much. And Jeevan ji, it is my pleasure. You are taking so much time and patiently giving answers to every question. I think these kind of sessions on and off, you should be able to get a channel of communication with the network who are genuinely came here, and all are majority of them independent investors and professionals. So we need to motivate them to join in social framework to successful. I think it is an opportunity for us to join, EQUIPPP is to join. And Hemant Gupta gar in the last minute we requested him to join. So he has considered and came all the way from BSc. Thank you so much, sir. Your presence and Jeevan sir presence really made us felt what some buzz about social framework is going on in this country. I think a lot of work need to be done. Last but not least, all the people who supported. Ours is a small startup company. We are high passionate interest to goals and all that. We know that we may not definitely reach, but at least we should create some perception among our network what we are trying to do. So I think we are done. Sai goes to the entire credit, and Nitin, Funny, MVS Garu, who are all the people. Meet wrote an article also. He's an intern working with us. So my company secretary, Karthik. So they are spending day and night and brought this to one particular stage. Really thanks to everyone. And the facility management who has provided in the last minute gave this opportunity. Thank you one and all, sir. My board, I have a very passionate professional board who's there with me. A veteran banker who is there also. India's largest multi-cap company, market cap company's independent director has agreed to be independent director in my company because he believes that I bring the transparency. Though I'm a promoter, I wanted to be a retail investor from the outside to only come for the company to at the end of the day AGM. So like that I've been running it. Few professionals who have joined. My managing director Mahesh Ramchandran, who is also driving force for me to pursue this activity. He is from Chennai and he has agreed to join the similar knowledge session with SEBI, Jeevan Garu and Hemant Gupta Garu in Chennai also with his own angel network. Looking forward to have the similar session in Chennai. Thank you one and all who are came here. My senior friend Vijay Raghavacharya Garu also here today. Yesterday only I told him that I'm doing this activity, though he's connected and came here. And some of long-time friends, Varma, Venkat Garu. Thank you one and all, Sridhar Satyaraj Garu. And finally Gauss and Petani Garu who is there since beginning. And my friend who came from JP from the other day, I didn't went to his meeting event also, but he came here and I'm thankful to him. Rajinikanth Garu, my independent director, is also there representing my board. Thank you one and all. Sorry if I, Swapna Garu, who has been there, Shri, who is also there to articulate this entire event. Thank you, one and all. Thanks, boss.